All right, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started here today. It's a little afternoon. My name is Dylan Martin, and I'm the Communications Director of the Transparency Foundation. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to go ahead and get started with our Transparency Foundation election integrity briefing on how we're working to shine a light on election practices across the state of California to improve compliance with very simple election integrity criteria. We need to restore the public's trust and confidence in how our elections are conducted. In order to do that, we need well-trained, ethical, trusted people carrying out the work in every election office across the state of California. And this presentation will walk you through a number of strategies that the Transparency Foundation that we are investing in the state of California to improve the integrity of the state's elections because they desperately need it. So first and foremost, what is the Transparency Foundation? The Transparency Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit, nonpartisan organization. As such, we do not engage in any express advocacy or political activity. We also take no government money, unlike a lot of left-wing organizations that are fully funded by government and taxpayer resources. We are exclusively funded by grassroots contributors who care about making government more transparent, more accountable, and we could certainly use that in California. The Transparency Foundation picked election integrity. We picked that as one of our core programs because people don't have transparency on what's going on in our elections, and that has resulted that lack of transparency and frankly, the lack of quality control, internal controls, performance, it's all led to a corrosive and cancerous kind of lack of public trust in how our elections are conducted. So by shining a light on the process and challenging government to improve its internal controls on elections, we hope to improve trust and confidence that people could have in how elections are conducted. But also remember that nothing in this presentation will relate to endorsing candidates or taking positions on ballot measures. Again, we're a nonpartisan nonprofit, 501c3. We don't do that type of activity. But what we do want is to make sure that the general public is going to be benefited by an election that is conducted with the highest level of integrity. It's something that the voters care about, that we should all hopefully care about in a functioning democracy. We want to make sure that voters understand the process and know how to vote and secure their vote by tracking it through ballot tracking systems as well. But our first strategy for addressing issues of integrity is to improve the quality of the workforce in every election office in the state of California. So most people think that the state election, California's election, is held by the state, the California state government. That it's, the Secretary of State's office, Shirley Weber, that they're the ones running the elections everywhere in the state. But it's actually not the case. The state government, they set rules and regulations through the Secretary of State's office for how elections are to be conducted statewide. But the actual mechanics, the actual execution of the election, from verifying the eligibility of candidates to putting measures on the ballot, to printing and designing ballots, to actually mailing them out, to receiving and processing them, counting the ballots, to theoretically checking to make sure that signatures are verified and that they're maintaining accurate voter rolls. All of those responsibilities are actually done by the individual counties in the state of California. So people need to understand that it's a dual system in California in this state. State regulations tell the counties what they're supposed to do. And a lot of those regulations are not good. A lot of them are flawed or ambiguous, but it's ultimately up to each county to get the job done right within the construct or confinement of bad regulations that the California Secretary of State has imposed on them. So what we noticed in the Transparency Foundation is not only that there's a great disparity between the quality of how each county implements their election, because they're all trying to do their own best way to comply with the rules. So there's a disparity between that quality in each county. But left-wing organizations and political campaigns over the last several years, several election cycles, particularly since 2014, 2016 in the state, they've aggressively funded, executed, and implemented operations where they recruit their activists, their partisan activists, to take jobs in the local county election offices. And we find that to be producing an unfair result where the seasonal workforce that each election office hires to actually staff the polling locations to actually receive ballots, open them up, check signatures, and process them, it calls into question whether those individuals can be trusted without bias to do the job. If it's only one side of the aisle that's doing the counting. We're not saying that they shouldn't be allowed to take positions. Everyone should be allowed to take positions, to have an eye on these ballots, to make sure they're being counted fairly and properly. But we just want everyone to know from various political points of view that these jobs are available, and that they should, if they want to be part of the process and make it the best process that it can be, they should take one of these jobs so that, everyone from every political spectrum has an eye on the process and is ensuring that everything is being counted fairly. Anyone can take these jobs. You cannot be turned away for your political beliefs. But if only one political side shows up, it could undermine the quality, or at least undermine the public trust and confidence in the election. So again, we want everyone's eyes on that to make sure it's being counted properly, fairly, legally. So this is why we're working to educate everyone that these jobs exist, these ballot counter jobs. And we want to train people through briefings like this on how to properly do that job. Because improving the staffing at county election offices is one of the most important election integrity reforms that we can implement outside of actually changing any of the laws on the books. And of course, as I've told you, the Transparency Foundation, we don't get involved in ballot measures or lobbying. So, but this is one thing that we can do, is make sure that that we are studying reforms and explaining how reforms will improve a system, but we're not a vehicle to execute things like ballot measures or introducing a law or passing a law. That's not our role. We're a 501c3. Other groups out there, they do that type of stuff. What we can do, again, is train better workers and help election offices to do the job to the best of their ability while we wait for policy change by our elected officials or by the voters through ballot measures. So we did an audit in 2023 of the 2022 election, and I would really like you to take the time after this briefing to read that report, because most people, when they're concerned about election integrity, they get a lot of misinformation from the internet. Truly, there is actually a lot of misinformation out there. They get a lot of conspiracy theories. They spread conspiracy theories. Some of them are grounded in a factual basis, but a lot of them are not. A lot of them are just speculation, or, hey, this looks suspicious, ergo it must be fraud or must be illegal. But most of the time, that's not the case if you really dig down into it. Again, we want to make sure everything is functioning legally and properly and everything. So we love exploring anything. If anyone has anything that they bring to us that might be a concern, we love looking into that. But we deal with facts here, and we want to make sure that you're equipped with facts, things that can be proven, and so you also have the correct information when you're talking to others about what's going on, that this can truly be verified as what is wrong with our system. And if you want a comprehensive fact-based understanding of California's election, how it's done, what the major flaws are, check out this report online at electionintegrityca.com, electionintegrityca.com. Please share that report, because it's very educational, and it's important to have facts when we talk about what's really going on with these elections. One of the biggest problems identified by that report is that there are terrible and inadequate signature reviews by county election offices as one of the biggest concerns with how our elections are run, and that they're being done inadequately by the county election offices. These signature reviews by the election office, by the workers in those offices on the ballots that come in, and when signatures on ballots are not properly vetted, that risk of voter fraud that occurs is significantly higher if you're not properly checking signatures. So we believe that one of the most important things we can do to immediately improve election integrity is to make sure that election offices are actually doing signature reviews aggressively and properly. And we actually implemented 2 pilot programs of training workers and deploying them into 2 counties in previous elections. And we compared the percentage of ballots rejected between the primary election prior to our pilot and the general election during our pilot. And we actually tripled the percent of ballots rejected in those 2 counties. So again, on those signature reviews, these people that we trained to go in there and make sure that they were doing the job properly, checking these signatures, we tripled the signature rejection rate for these ballots. And now, mind you, no ballots were rejected inappropriately, because the ballot cure rate, when you mail out a letter asking, is this your signature? Did you actually mean to sign this? That's called ballot curing, where voters get the opportunity to say, yeah, that actually is my signature. I promise that I did vote. This is me. I confirm. So the ballot cure rate of people saying, no, that's my signature, please correct it, please accept my ballot, that did not go up. So what that means is that, we weren't more aggressive per se. We just caught more of the actual problems. So if we rejected more, but the cure rate didn't go up, it means that there were legitimate problems that were caught, and that rate was tripled. So we would like to see that pilot expanded in every election office in the state of California, which means we need to scale it statewide and get many of you to take the final jobs that are available in these election offices. So this training is designed to help people get the available jobs before the primary election and before the general election in November as well, to do this work. We also, throughout all of this, strongly support public education on how to vote with the most integrity. So that's what we call our SAFE voting method. And it's an acronym, an easy to understand acronym, but we'll kind of go through it here. First, we strongly urge people not to wait until election day to vote. Vote in the first 72 hours of the election. Your ballot will be mailed out, no matter where you live in the state, about 30 days before election day. You should receive your ballot about 30 days out of the election, and we urge you, once you get your ballot, to vote immediately. We urge you to tell your friends to vote immediately. And there are many groups that get this wrong and spread misinformation about this. And I don't know why they get it wrong. Either they're ignorant on the process, or they're intentionally creating a problem with conspiracy theories. And we do not believe their recommendations are helpful. We actually think their recommendations are hurtful, and that they put voters at great risk of losing their vote in an election. Because if voters wait until the end of the election, they cannot assure that their ballot was counted. And that's a shame. And that's why we keep telling people to vote immediately. So this is our SAFE voting method: is do not wait, send, audit, fix, examine. Is our SAFE voting method that we recommend. And we have bipartisan support for this. And there are people who are election integrity activists on both sides of this that agree. The election lawyers agree. The practitioners agree. Everyone agrees. Voting early is the best way to verify that your ballot is counted in the election. And here is why. By sending your ballot on by sending your ballot on day one, within the first 72 hours at least, gives you the full 30 days of the election period. And yes, people want to lament that California's elections are 30 days long. We can understand grievances, again, but that's not our role to work on changing the laws or changing those policies or anything right now. Our goal is just to show you and explain the best way to have a secure vote in the current system. And voting early gives you that full 30 days of the election period to make sure that your vote was counted properly and to verify it was counted. If you mail it in the first 3 days, let's say the Postal Service delivers it in a day, or let's say it takes up to 3 days. Local mail doesn't take more than 2 days, but let's give them 3 days. That means that within the first week of the election office in your area gets your ballot and can process it. And it should take no more than a day or two to process ballots. So by day 7, 8, 9-ish, your ballot should show that it's been received and counted. That's where the audit comes in. We want you to audit your ballot by day 7, 8, 9, 10 of the election. And you can go online to do this, the Secretary of State's website, for ballot tracking. Your ballot, when it comes in the mail, I believe it should have this website address. At least most counties will do it. Is they'll put the address for where to track your ballot. This website is where'smyballot.sos.ca.gov. You go on there, you put in your name, your zip code, a little, other information to say which voter you are, and it'll tell you that they have what the status of your ballot is, whether it's been received, whether it's been counted yet, if it hasn't been received. But many of you will actually get an email and a text message when your ballot mails, as well as when your ballot is received and counted. And even if you don't get a text or email, because the state may not have your text number or your email, you can proactively verify that your ballot was counted by going to that website. We need to condition, train, and educate voters that voting is not just filling in bubbles and sealing it in an envelope and signing. It is voting is doing that and tracking your ballot to verify that it was actually received and counted. Because what if it's rejected and you didn't pay attention to that? Then, oh no, your vote wasn't counted. Oh well. So you have to make sure to do that in the first week and a half to 2 weeks of the election. Because if for some reason your ballot is not counted and received, you can then go in and demand a second ballot. Yes, you get 2 ballots in every election. Every voter in California is entitled to 2 ballots in the election. Dead people get 4 ballots, but you get 2 ballots. You get your original ballot, but every voter is entitled to ask for and demand, without any explanation, without any ability for refusal. They're allowed to ask for that second provisional ballot and cast that second provisional ballot. So if your ballot is not verified and you sent it in the first 72 hours and by day 12, 13, 14 of the election, that's where we recommend that you fix it by going into your nearest polling location or the registrar of voters and demanding your second provisional ballot. And then you can vote in person. And that's your backup. If for some reason your original vote there's something wrong with it, it's not verified, it's not counted, that provisional ballot allows you to correct this issue by making sure you have this backup to get your vote counted. So don't wait until election day, fix the problem immediately. So again, if you waited until election day and you just voted on that day itself, and then you later find out that your ballot was rejected, you do not have the opportunity to get that second provisional ballot. Election day has come and gone. You don't have the opportunity to change anything, to fix anything. You missed out. So this is why it's important to vote early. And then, so again, that's fixing your ballot, is going in person. And if you find a problem on your ballot, for some reason you find something suspicious or problematic about your ballot, you can also report it to us so that we can look into these issues. You can go to problemballots.com and file a report. But then, of course, we still urge you to go and get that provisional ballot still to make sure that it's all fixed. But then examine the E of the safe voting method is sharing this information with your friends and family, but also signing up as a volunteer to either work election offices or actually being in the volunteer pool to monitor elections, which we covered this. But I will note also that the people that want to vote early, the politicians in California, they've dramatically reduced the number of polling locations on election day. So we raise a concern in our report that this is actually a form of voter suppression because polling indicates that liberal voters prefer to vote by mail and conservative voters prefer to vote on election day. Or they like to go to in-person polling locations for slightly earlier voting. But we believe that this is a thinly veiled attempt by liberal politicians to suppress conservative votes by going to an all mail-in election and reducing the number of polling stations on election day. So if you wait until election day, or even just a couple days before election day with early in-person voting, is you may get really, really long lines on election day. And while you may be willing to wait, not everyone is willing to wait. Maybe you're a soccer mom of 5 kids and you're pulling up after school and you're getting out of your van and you want to go and turn in your ballot really quick and run back and take your kids to soccer practice or something. And the line is 2 hours long and you don't have time to wait. And that's, maybe that's on election day itself. And, oh no, I don't have time to sit and wait or vote in person or whatever. I don't have time to do it. So I'm not going to vote. My vote's not going to count now. That is the consequence of waiting until election day. Or what we even saw in, I believe it was 2022 election, is there were horrific storms, thunder, lightning all across the West Coast and in Nevada. And it significantly depressed turnout because while, some of us may be willing to crawl through broken glass to go and vote, some people don't want to drive in the rain or they feel unsafe doing so, or they don't want to, go out because they're afraid of lightning or something, or there's some other natural disaster on election day. You don't want to leave it up to chance by waiting till that single day. So, we need to make use of the system that we have to make sure that our votes are counted. So going and voting early, again, is the best way to ensure that your vote is counted. So this is why we need to educate all of our voters. And again, there are a lot of yahoos and conspiracy theorists that are hurting our elections by urging people to go in on election day, but it's absolute foolishness. And here's another reason too why you should not wait until election day. Is I hear one of the conspiracy theories I hear the most is that one side of the political aisle might know, how you voted, if you vote early, and that they'll know how many ballots to fabricate to steal an election because they're tracking, how many ballots have come in. First of all, it is public data about how often you vote as a voter. So everyone can see if you voted in the last 4 out of 4 elections. And so they can have a very, very, very good idea if you are likely to be voting in the current election, if you voted in all previous elections. So if they were trying to, come up with, fraudulent ballots, a fraudulent number of ballots or something like that, and you're trying to fool them by holding onto your ballot until the last minute, but you voted in every election beforehand, they probably already figured that you're going to vote if you're a frequent voter. So, you might as well vote early because they're already counting on your vote. So just make sure your vote is counted and don't leave it up to chance that it's going to get thrown out at the last minute. I mean, that whole thing is a conspiracy theory, but it's better to be safe than sorry, as an example, when I get that argument, is don't leave it up to chance. But again, this polling location reduction, it's voter suppression. It needs to end, and people need to stop listening to what the conspiracy theorists have to say. But the best way to examine, to be part of the examine team, is to actually be an election worker. who is paid and doing it, but because volunteering to poll watch is not very effective. I'm not discouraging you from doing it, but I prefer that you get an actual job as a paid election worker to process the ballots, because volunteers are given no real ability to watchdog the process. They're kind of treated like dirt. A volunteer shows up and says, I want to monitor. I want to, watch from the sidelines, make sure you're counting properly or whatever. The election office will say, okay, go sit over in that corner. While over in the complete opposite corner, we're going to process the ballots. You're seated so far away from the action that you don't actually know what's going on a lot of the time. But if you were a paid worker doing the work, you're actually doing the action. And if you have integrity, you're making sure that it's done right. And I think that the best way for people to spend their time if they want to be involved in volunteering for election integrity isn't to be a monitor. It's to get a job inside of your election office in your area. I'm not discouraging monitors. If that's the only thing you can do, if all the jobs were taken already, then please monitor. It is helpful. And every once in a while, it does detect something that's inappropriate or problematic. But if you're going to be a volunteer monitor, we want you to follow certain rules, which we'll talk about in a moment. We don't want you to get in trouble. Please don't. But first, how do you get a job at your election office? There are a number of offices across the state of California that are currently hiring jobs. Some may have already finished, but probably not, because we're still pretty early in the process before the June primary. But there are offices across the state in all 58 counties, all the election offices that are hiring for these workers. And I encourage you, if an office has for some reason filled all the jobs, or you check later and see that they're all filled, then still let them know that you're interested in taking a job, because people quit all the time. They may start the process and find out they hate it and quit on the first day, and then there's a bunch of job openings. So don't give up, and maybe let them know that you're still interested, and so that they have a short list of potential people to contact if a job opening comes about. But the hiring process has already started. So you need to go and contact your local registrar of voters office. And right here is the website for the statewide listing on county election offices that is hosted on the Secretary of State's website. It's at this website right here if you want to take a screenshot or something, or write it down. But it's also on our website as well, and I'll show you where it is on the next slide. San Diego, for example, for the election office is sdvote.com. And when you click under that website, it has a section for becoming a poll worker, which I'll also show you in a second. So, but here's the here we go. Here's the list of elections offices too on our website at the transparencyfoundation.org. If you go transparencyfoundation.org under programs, then you'll see Secure the Vote Initiative. And then under sign up to work in your local elections office, we have a list there that you can go to as well. And it links you to the same place. And it's just a huge list of all the contact information for all the county registrar of voters offices throughout the state. But again, so if you go on San Diego's website, sdvote.com, when you click under that website, it says, become a poll worker, not a watcher, a worker. And it's on their homepage. And if you click on that, then there's an application here, which you can see on the right, that you fill out and that you return to them. And we're not going to go through the application itself, but it's a one-page application in most counties, and pretty easy. See, it doesn't ask you a whole lot of information. Just wants to know some of your name and address and stuff like that. But so how do you actually do the job if you're hired and you're hired to do the processing of ballots as a paid employee? So as a paid employee, you have to do what you're told within reason. So you've got to look at a couple things. First, you have to be trained by the local election office. They will train you. You have to follow their rules and instructions. Second, you have to carefully review signatures and reject those that do not match. You will be trained on how to do the signature reviews, but your common sense should also guide you. Your training is one level, but common sense is another level. And if you think something's not right, object to it. If the signature is supposed to be for someone named Jane Doe and you see John Doe signed on there, then maybe that's an issue. That common sense should prevail, that this is a little, odd. So, if you think something's not right, object to it. And if your supervisor overrules you, which can and does happen, stand your ground. If you really believe something is wrong, stand your ground and ask to speak to a manager who's above the supervisor. Remember, you're an employee, which means that you also have whistleblower protection rights. So, if you think they're trying to shut you up and cover something up that is legitimately concerning, you have the right to escalate that, and you have whistleblower protection to say, this is wrong. This is, I want to make sure you know it's wrong because maybe this is a cover up, or, I want to make sure that this is brought to light. You have protection. You have rights for that. And if you feel you're mistreated for any reason or retaliated against or anything, you can also ask for an HR representative. Always think through, what are the rules? How have I been trained? And what is common sense? And then act with integrity in that situation. Don't assume everything is illegal. Don't assume bad intentions. Many times it's not illegality, it's just sloppiness or poor training for the supervisor or manager, or neglect or laziness or something. It doesn't always mean that they're bad or that they're intentionally doing something illegal. They just may not know or be misinformed or something like that. So don't assume that they're doing it out of bad faith. But in your capacity, do your best in your role to show, hey, I know this to be a concern. And I want to make sure that, in operating in good faith, that you understand why this is a concern, and treat them with, the same respect you want to be treated. But don't always assume that you're 100% right, because you may not be. So be open to feedback. But if you feel something is wrong, absolutely stand your ground. And again, remember, you're an employee and you have whistleblower protection. They cannot terminate you. They cannot reassign you. They cannot discriminate against you. They cannot retaliate against you for bringing up a legitimate concern. You have protection. Always document everything that concerns you. And but now, as a volunteer, you can sign up. We do have a volunteer sign up page for you to become a volunteer statewide at electionintegrityca.com, electionintegrityca.com. As a volunteer, again, this is signing up as a volunteer. This is not as a worker. As a volunteer, you are to monitor only. You don't actually get to count the ballots like an election worker. You're just there to watch the people that are counting the ballots and make sure that they're doing their job right. So, there's kind of multiple levels of verification and checking the process here. Is, the most important job is to be in the room where it happens and counting the ballots themselves and making sure they're counted correctly. But, then the volunteers can be a little bit of oversight and watch to make sure that the ballot counters are counting correctly. Again, you're kind of seated far away. It's hard to see a lot of the times. And it's not the most effective way to ensure that there's good things in this process, but you might catch something, and it's better to have an eye on everything. So it's still useful, but it's not the most useful way. But if you'd like to volunteer, you can sign up on electionintegrityca.com, and we will help get you connected with the volunteer opportunities. But as a volunteer, you cannot interfere. You cannot start harassing staff, and all questions and comments have to be directed to a manager. You'll be told who is the one person you can talk to, and that's the only person you should be talking to, not staff. It is the manager. There's the only one that you're supposed to be talking to as a volunteer. And try to watch and make sure that the signatures and addresses are correctly matched. And if a ballot isn't scanning, it must be perfected. So what is ballot perfecting? It is making sure that a vote is essentially counted correctly. So if you take your ballot and you scribble way outside the lines and the ballot counter, the machine can't count that because you're way outside the lines or something, then they have to take a new ballot and bubble in your answers exactly as you had them, but in a way that the machine will scan it. It's called perfecting your ballot. So there are two people that sit side by side and they translate your vote onto a new ballot. So there are two people watching to make sure that it's theoretically done correctly and that it matches up between the old ballot and the new ballot for scanning in the system. But if you see something wrong or, whatever, ask for a manager, not staff, if you have questions or if you don't understand something, and then you document and report back. We provide you with a sample track sheet on the website too, under electionintegrityca.com, that you can download. And you can fill this out as you're monitoring the process. And if you fill out this information, it gives us enough of an idea for us to contact the office or potentially a lawyer to ask questions about the specific ballot or specific incident that you're complaining about. So we urge you to use that. It's a good format that lets us know what's going on if you witness something that is of a legitimate legal concern, and whether they're perfecting incorrectly or imperfectly, or some other concern that comes up with the counting process, then we can look into that. But here's what not to do when volunteering in the election office, because we do not want you to get in trouble. No one wants to get in trouble. So number one, do not interfere. Do not go to a voting booth anywhere. Do not approach voters and talk to voters. Do not touch voting materials or equipment. Do not sit at any official tables. Do not jump in and assist the operations, like, hey, let me lift that box for you. You're not allowed to. Even if you think you're being nice, you're not allowed to. So do not. You are literally there just to be a pair of eyes. So you're allowed to stand in the corner and just monitor. You cannot talk to voters within 100 feet, and you cannot talk about their vote or their qualifications to vote. You can't look at someone and say, you don't look like you're a citizen. You can't do that. Don't do that. That's not permitted. It's not appropriate. It's also a little rude, but don't do any of that. You cannot directly challenge a voter. Only staff at the election office can do that. They're the only ones allowed to. You cannot wear any electioneering material, any buttons, any campaign buttons or apparel or hats or shirts or anything. You cannot wear a uniform that makes you look like you're a guard or security. You cannot use your cell phone, pager, or any other electronic device. Those have to stay off. Keep it in your pocket. Don't pull it out. Again, so you need to look like you're, apolitical in this process. Don't wear, any materials for your favorite candidates or anything like that. Don't do any of that. You also certainly cannot touch election personnel. Do not do that. You also cannot eat or drink inside the polling place. And so there is very limited stuff that you can do. Again, you are literally only there to be a pair of eyes, and otherwise you basically don't exist and don't act like you exist. You're just there for a pair of eyes. You can be a potted plant in the corner watching. Again, it's better than nothing, but I'd still rather you get into an election office as an election worker itself. So there's actually a really good manual that some of the county election officers and registrar of voters that they'll put out. At least one that we know of that is really good is the Orange County Registrar of Voters. Every election season or every couple of years, they'll put out an updated version of their election observer guidelines handbook. And it goes over a lot of this information about how to be an election monitor. It's very thorough. It's easy to understand. It's brilliant. And we really appreciate the service that Orange County Registrar of Voters provided by putting that manual out there. So you can reference that, and it's generally applicable to other counties throughout the state as well. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. If you have any other questions, please reach out at electionintegrity@thetransparencyfoundation.org or call us at 619-210-0543. Thank you for joining us today. And please, please, please get involved in the process. Please share the safe voting method with friends and family. Please take a paid election job and get involved in making our elections more safe and secure. Thank you for joining today, and have a great weekend, everyone.